Big news in the NFL. We'll get to it right now. Johnny Mac is here. Talk a little NFL as the Dallas Cowboys have cut Dez Bryant, released him to go in a new direction. So what will the future be for Dallas? What will the future be for Dez Bryant? And to start it off, John, you know people are going to wonder.
Preemptive strike, Mike. No. Do not want Dez Bryant.
No, I would think
need Dez Bryant.
I don't think any Eagles fans out there want Dez Bryant or need Dez Bryant. Just wanted to get it from you. That's all. I wanted to give you the chance.
Let that Mickey Spagnola text, John.
That part of it's incorrect because evidently people do want Dez Bryant.
You think so?
Well, I've gotten a couple tweets already. But obviously, the more educated fans know. I mean, he's not a fit for this organization. They don't have the money. Even if they did have the money, they wouldn't be interested. This is a descending player. He's not a deep threat by any stretch of the imagination. He doesn't fit for what this organization needs, which is a guy who stretches the field. And that's why they signed Mike Wallace, who can run.
John, reportedly when he walked out, though, he said, I'll see these guys twice a year. What do you read into that kind of comment?
I read into it. He's very upset, and now he's got to get on the horn and
it's got to be Washington. It's got to be Washington.
I don't think he's a fit there. I mean, if you think about the Redskins, they signed Paul Richardson. Remember, they have Jamison Crowder as a slot receiver, one of the better slot receivers in football, and they also have Josh Doctson, who's tremendously talented, and has had trouble staying healthy. But if he is healthy, there's no comparison between a guy like that at this stage of his career and a guy like Dez Bryant at his stage. Doxson's better. Now, people are going to say you're nuts, but you're looking at a name. Again, if you look at Dez Bryant over the last three seasons, this is not a small sample size. Since he got injured with the Jones fracture, he's been a poor NFL receiver, bottom line, certainly below average. And you're not, if you're the Washington Redskins, I don't think they have any interest in him either.
Giants?
Yeah, they have anybody?
Somebody in the NFC. Please let him go somewhere in the NFC.
Well, the Giants are a better fit because they still have decisions to make. Obviously, if they trade Odell Beckham, you have numbers. Brandon Marshall's 34 years old. It would be, you're getting slightly younger, but they're both descending players and both big names. They have Sterling Shepard, who's a good slot receiver. They have Roger Lewis. They signed Cody Latimer. They have a lot of bodies, but there's not as much certainty with the Giants from a lot of angles, from the quarterback angle, the receiver angle, OBJ. So maybe if some of the dominoes start to fall, that team could be a fit as a short term. But ultimately, I think he's going to be looking outside the NFC East, Buffalo, Green Bay, teams like that that need receivers. I'm sure he'd like to stick it to the Cowboys, and he feels bad about how it went down, but opportunity might not be there for him.
So the news today, Dez Bryant has been released by the Dallas Cowboys. Now, new Eagles wide receiver coach Gunter Brewer. He was the wide receiver coach at Oklahoma State.
Okay.
And he had Dez Bryant.
Oh, here we go.
So there you go.
Connect the dots.
Connect those dots there, John.
Yeah. Well, and we can probably do 5 degrees of separation, eventually get to Kevin Bacon if we want to go that deep. But Gunter Brewer, he also coached Mac Hollins, and everyone made that connection, said, well, Mac Hollins is going to – and then they signed Mike Wallace a couple days later. Nobody's looking at things from that perspective. You're trying to build the best roster you can build. And look, I'm not saying if Dez Bryant said, look, I want to play for the Eagles, I'll play for the veteran minimum. I want to prove myself. You never say never in this league, but he's not going to want to play for the veteran minimum. And this team just doesn't have cap space. That's number one. And number two, there's no glaring need.
So where does this leave Dallas's wide receiving core?
Well, they need some help. They needed help with Dez Bryant, and then that's the problem. You can't pay a guy who's had that production over $12 million and counted 16.5 against the cap. That's the reason he's not there. They signed Allen Hurns. They still have Terrence Williams. They still have Cole Beasley. It's not a very good group right now. If you look in the first round, they're probably going to look heavily at wide receiver. Whether that, hopefully the kid from Alabama feels Cortland Sutton from SMU would stay in Dallas. That's a possibility. But they need help at that position. There's no question about it, but they needed help even if they had Dez Bryant.
A couple teams you mentioned, Buffalo, Green Bay, Baltimore, New Orleans have been mentioned as potential landing spots for him. Him in Green Bay would be interesting. Jordy Nelson is out. You put him with Aaron Rodgers. That could be an interesting combination.
Yeah, that would, because the one thing he still has is the big body. And nobody throws the back shoulder fade better than Aaron Rodgers. Nobody in the history of this game. So I could see that being a big threat, especially in the red zone. I don't think he's got enough speed left, enough explosion, enough route running ability to ever become what he was. But, yeah, like everybody else, Aaron Rodgers would make him look better than he is.
No question. So Dez Bryant has been released by the Dallas Cowboys today. Jerry Jones, they sat down, right? They had a little meeting there. And after being released, Bryant said, I'll see you guys twice this year, implying, that, as Pete said, that he wants to sign inside the NFC East. But, as you mentioned, John, there's not really a fit. But he's not the player that he was. He hasn't been a 1,000-yard guy for 3 years in a row, as you kind of chronicled here. But he is only 29 years old. You think he's going to get another big-time contract, or you think he's going to be on one of those one-year prove-it type of deals?
I think from his standpoint, he's almost got to go for the one-year prove-it deal. At this late in the process, there's not a ton of teams with a lot of salary cap space or room for that matter. So the timing hurts, and this is why it's important to get sort of those caveats in your contract. We have bonuses or something that forces the team's hand. It's usually the first day of the league year, third day of the league year. And why agents do that is to make teams make a decision. And when they have to make a decision, at least if they cut a player, they have an opportunity to hit the market when teams are still looking and teams are still have a lot of money. That's not the case with Dez Bryant, so that hurts them. And the production, more than anything else, I think he almost has to take a one-year prove-it deal, hopefully reinvigorate his career somewhere, and maybe a bigger contract is waiting for him next year.
Now, John, you casually mentioned Mike Wallace's name twice in this conversation. He has 585,000 reasons not to get fatter than me.
Yeah, that's one of the weirdest incentives I've ever seen, because you wonder why it was put in there, to be honest. I mean, Mike Wallace is never getting near 250 pounds. People point to the fact that he
weighs 205 pounds.
Yeah. He failed a conditioning test in Baltimore, and people are saying, well, maybe the Eagles want him to stay in Seattle. I mean, the guy has never been over, as you say, 205, maybe 210 if he got out of shape. And it's one of those weird things that there's something called likely to be earned incentives, and that counts against the cap as opposed to incentives they rule are not likely to be earned. So I'm not sure what the Eagles gained from doing this. There's probably something, because Howie Roseman doesn't do anything without a reason. But honestly, I have no idea why that incentive was put in the contract.
It's almost like there was a misprint. Like they put 585,000 was wrong, or that 250 was supposed to be 205 and it was wrong.
Maybe they maybe they did. Maybe juxtapose the numbers, and it should have been 205. That would make some sense because, as I said, he did fail a conditioning test the first year he was in Baltimore.
Right.
And maybe you don't want him getting up to 210 or 212.
He even
would make some sense.
Did he? He even tweeted like he said, "Now I got to lose 5 pounds so I can get to 249 by Monday." I mean, he even made a joke about how ridiculous his own contract seemingly is.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it will be interesting in the coming days. I'm sure somebody will figure it out. One of the Joel Corey's really good as far as contracts go. I reached out to him, waiting for an answer. I just don't understand the thought process behind that kind of clause in the contract.
For those of you who are wondering what the heck we're talking about, the Eagles have a clause in Mike Wallace's contract. He gets a $585,000 bonus if he does not weigh more than 250 pounds by Monday,
right,
according to Field Yates. He weighs 205. Right. Now, when I saw Field Yates tweet this out this morning, John, literally I thought somebody hacked his account. That's how ridiculous this clause seems.
And maybe it is as simple as just getting the numbers wrong, and it should have been 205. Somebody's going to be embarrassed then if the Eagles did it.
Right, if that's the case.
It would be embarrassing. I cannot figure it out. If it is 250 pounds, I have no idea, except for the timing, maybe a cash flow issue, to push back a relatively big check.
Now, do those type of performance bonuses affect your cap at all?
Yeah, those are likely to be earned incentives. In this case, likely is unquestionably earned. So those do count against the cap. And remember, we're in the off season, so it's basically the top 51 rule. So I explained this when the Eagles signed Paul Warlow and Richard Rodgers, and people say, well, they have no cap room. Well, what you have to understand is only your top 51 contracts count in the off season, and you have to be under the cap for those 51 deals. And so when you sign somebody to a veteran minimum like Warlow or Rodgers, it ups your cap hit a little bit, but you're also taking guys who make $555,000. They no longer count. So while the number's 800,000, you're only losing from a cap standpoint at this stage of the game. You're only losing about 250,000. So, long story short, it's not going to matter much until you cut to 53, and all the contracts count.
Yeah, and we're talking receivers. Mike Wallace, Dez Bryant, Jarvis Landry signed a huge deal the other day. 5 years, $75.5 million extension. Kind of a shocking contract, if you ask me. And you look around the league, I mean, Jarvis Landry to get that kind of deal, I guess a lot of other receivers around the league are pretty excited about hitting the free agent market.
Yeah, I think a lot of the slot receivers are excited because they were always undervalued as compared to outside receivers. Very similar on the other side of the football. Outside cornerbacks get paid more than slot cornerbacks. For a slot receiver, this is a big deal. This is kind of a breakthrough deal for players. So those guys are specifically excited.
Absolutely. And Jarvis Landry, 5 years, $75.5 million, which means, the Browns are kind of – does that say that the Browns are banking on him to be a number one type of receiver, or are they going to play him in the slot?
No, I think the majority of his time will be in the slot. I think it's their thought process is he's the best slot receiver in the game. If he's not, he's certainly in the top 2 or 3, and that is very, very important.
Yeah.
And certainly, with the multiple formations everybody runs now, even slot receivers, guys who are pigeonholed with that term, they're asked to go outside, often. I'm not going to say a ton, but the vast majority of the time, 60, 70%, he's going to be in the slot because that's where he's most effective.
John, we saw an instance last year with the Cowboys, obviously, with why is the running back Ezekiel Elliott? Sorry, slipped my mind for a second there to talk about Dez Bryant. We saw him get suspended for 6 games for something that the league essentially couldn't prove. This Reuben Foster stuff is kind of disturbing, if you will. Charged with felony domestic violence by the Santa Clara DA yesterday. It was an incident back in February where he was accused of dragging his live-in girlfriend, punching her 8 to 10 times during the dispute. The 49ers have released a statement saying that the team is aware of these charges. But is this another situation? I mean, did the Zeke Elliott situation set the precedence that it doesn't matter whether there's video or anything else, that you are in some deep trouble there, pal?
Yeah, there's no question. I mean, from his perspective, I think the bigger deal is the legal part of it right now.
He's facing 11 years in prison, by the way.
Yeah, best case scenario is he gets off. Best case scenario for him is he gets off from a legal standpoint. He's suspended 6 games by the NFL. From the league's perspective, there's no question he's going to be suspended if he's not going to jail. And they've set a precedent, as you mentioned, with Ezekiel Elliott. Even before that, as they raised that sort of first hit for domestic violence to 6 games, he's going to be there's no avoiding that. There's no question. That's the best scenario for him is, as I said, getting off from a legal perspective and being suspended for 6 games.
John McMullen, more on the NFL. The draft is getting closer. We'll do more draft coverage next week on the Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN. Follow him on Twitter at JFMcMullen. The big news today, though, Dez Bryant has been released by the Dallas Cowboys. And, John, follow him at JFMcMullen and 97.3ESPN.com. John, have a good weekend.
Hey, you too, guys.